Hey Peculiar Coven, it's me, Amanda the Peculiar Brunette, and today I'm going to do the very first video lesson for the Coven, and I thought it would be best to start with the basics, which is, what is witchcraft? So let's jump in. Anytime I've ever told anyone I was a witch, or I've heard other people, tell their stories of, coming out of the broom closet, the very first thing people ask is, well, what is witchcraft? What is it? What do you believe? So how I'm going to do this video is I'm going to discuss what witchcraft is, the definition of it, and the ways you can practice it. But I'll also be discussing the popular types of witchcraft, the ones that I hear people ask about the most. I'll discuss if witchcraft is evil or not. Hint, hint, I think you guys already know the answer. Witchcraft beliefs and is witchcraft a religion? And then I'll talk about the differences between Wicca and witchcraft. And that should pretty much wrap up the video. So, make sure that you guys get into the Discord group and ask me any questions if you have them on this video when we're done, because I'd be happy to answer them. Okay, let's jump in. Words and magic were in the beginning one and the same thing. And even today, words retain much of their magical power. So what is witchcraft? Witchcraft uses rituals and spells and sometimes natural elements to manipulate and influence the world around us. Now, it kind of depends on the spiritual practitioner and any traditions or cultures or spiritual beliefs that they have already, or any skills that they have already, like say they really like cooking. They can bring all this into their witchcraft beliefs, which I think is what's so beautiful about witchcraft, is it's completely customizable and you can make it work for you however you want. Now, I think at the base, root of most practices, they somehow work with, their own spiritual beliefs, their own energy, their own intentions, and sometimes connect with some sort of a source or the universe or an otherworldly plane, spiritual plane that they also interact with. However, I thought it would be interesting because that's kind of my perspective on witchcraft and what it is. But I thought you guys might want to get a little bit more technical about that. So I went onto Reddit and I was kind of looking around and looking at what other people had said their beliefs were about witchcraft and what they think witchcraft actually is. And I thought it would be kind of interesting to share that with you guys. And the ones that I kind of believe in, I put towards the end. So anyways, I'm going to put them up on the screen. I took a few screenshots that I think you guys would find interesting. So let's chat about that here. Okay, so this first one says, I don't think of witchcraft and magic as literal power, but as a sort of mental toolkit for improving the way you interact with yourself and the world around you. Rituals and spells help me to focus my thoughts and intentions, while the tarot helps me dredge the hidden bits of my mind and analyze what I bring up. Crystals provide a sensory input to pull me out of the panic spiral or other disassociation. I don't believe in literal good and bad energy, but thinking in terms of good and bad energy helps me put out peace when I don't feel peaceful. I want to make it clear that I don't look down on people who believe in a literal power of witchcraft. I think a part of witchcraft is an intentional blurring of literal and metaphorical, and I can't deny that my metaphorical approach has literal results. Is it because I've tapped into a deeper well of power? Is it because I've altered my thinking to be more positive? Is there a meaningful difference between the two? Beats me. So I thought that one was really interesting too, because I think that's something that comes up a lot with especially newer witches, when they're trying to get an understanding of what it is that they believe. And I thought that they kind of had some really interesting points. Like, I always like including kind of psychology and science and history in my witchcraft beliefs. And I think that that's what she's kind of doing here, especially where she's talking about like sensory inputs and pulling it out of like anxiety and like disassociation. And I think, a lot of witches wonder too, like they did a spell and then, it works. And so you kind of wonder like, oh, was I the one that did it, or was it just a coincidence? And so I kind of liked that perspective. For me, it's a way to get closer to nature and express myself. I've never been one to follow the norms of society, and witchcraft is a way to help me get more in tune with the energies that surround us. Every path is unique. I really liked that one too, because I think, we were talking about that in the Discord, and it came up too in the book club with reading about Hecate. And I think a lot of us have experienced the fact that we're outside societal norms by believing in what we believe. Christianity is the most popular religion worldwide. So at some point we decided to reject that and instead embrace like a witchcraft path. Now, there's plenty of practitioners that include Christianity in their witchcraft, and you're of course welcome to do that. But I think a lot of practitioners come to witchcraft because they are outside those cultural norms. They do see things differently. They don't believe in the popular routes. And so by doing that, you're forced to really kind of get to know who you are, because it's kind of a decision to make to be outside and to have that pushback, especially from family members who don't agree with that. And it can be really hard to make that choice. So I thought that was, every path is unique, and I thought that was a interesting tidbit. This next one, she also talks about coming from a high demand religion, and like kind of more psychological aspects of it as well, which I thought was interesting. So let me read you that. Also, I'm a pretty new witch. I've been practicing about a year, and my definition is still growing and changing. To me, witchcraft is tapping into the metaphysical, whether this be our own intuition and subconscious, reaching out to the threads of the universe, or working with a deity. It's making an intentional connection between the seen and the unseen. How different witches choose to do this is completely up to them. For example, my practice has a heavy emphasis on listening to my body and mind to tell me when I'm ready to practice, working intuitively rather than following timelines like lunar, yearly, etc. For some of my friends, they need the timelines to structure their practice. Both are still witchcraft, and I get to learn from my friends about the power of the seasons and astrological positions. I love witchcraft because there is no true right or wrong way, and since I came from a high-demand religion, I needed to be able to do things my way instead of following a bunch of rules that burned me out. Witchcraft is healing and empowering for me, and I hope you can find this definition that inspires you and empowers you. One of the things that stood out to me is that they prefer to listen to their body and mind, and they prefer to work intuitively rather than following like certain timelines, like lunar ones, yearly ones, etc. So I think that that's really great too, because a lot of practitioners think that they have to celebrate like the pagan holidays or the wheel of the year, or like the lunar cycles. They have to do that. Like if you don't do that, then you're not a real witch. And that's, I think, such a great point that she brought up, is that you don't have to do that to be a witch and to practice witchcraft. She also discussed about having to follow a bunch of rules and how that had burned her out. And see, that's another thing. Witchcraft is so beautiful because it's so unique and you can customize it to your own beliefs. So I really liked her definition of that. I really liked this one as well. It says, I'm an agnostic witch. I mostly work in divination, astrology, and candle magic. Very, very low budget and low effort. I think the magic is within the mundane. Making a room smell good and looking at candlelight helps with mental health by keeping you grounded. Pulling tarot helps you see your situation through a different perspective, as does looking at astrology. Astrology can also help you think of potential issues that might arise so you can prepare for them. Any extra spiritual significance anyone wants to assign to these practices is great. I just simply don't. I guess my point is, witchcraft can be as simple as doing stuff because you like it. Now, I thought that was interesting, but I thought what was more interesting was the response that this other person gave. So let me talk about that first. So this is my perspective as well, though I'm coming at it from a chaos magic angle with a bit of generic occultism and Satanism for good measure. Witchcraft is anything you do that brings you inner strength and peace. Any figure, regardless of source, that gives you strength or is meaningful to you in any way is valid to work with, whatever that means to you. I always half-jokingly state that something as simple as a skincare routine to end the day can be seen as witchcraft ritual, because at the end of the day, all you're doing is manifesting good energy for yourself by simply taking care of yourself. You're watching a film you've seen a billion times before because the story gives you comfort and you relate to the characters. Witchcraft. You're not doing anything different than those picking up a Bible before bed. It's all stories. It's all inherently meaningless things we choose to give meaning to because it brings us comfort. I love that perspective of it because it is true. It's anything that really, witchcraft can be anything that gives meaning to you. Like when you decorate your altar or make a sacred space like for yourself, it's something that is inherently worthwhile and meaningful to you. And it allows you to slow down and be more present. And I think half of witchcraft is being present and noticing, things around you, being present in your own life, being grounded in your own life, and you're understanding yourself enough to know what your beliefs are and being, firm enough to decide to stand in those, no matter if someone else likes it or not. And noticing nature around us too, wherever that may be. Like you might live somewhere that's, tropical and the weather is the same year round. That doesn't mean that just because you don't have that seasonality to practice that you're not a witch, right? So I just thought that one was really interesting. So, okay, I'm going to do the very last one I have here because I thought that one kind of goes along with what I believe witchcraft is. So let me find that one here. Okay, actually I had two more, but they're kind of the same. They kind of talk about the same thing. So, and this is kind of more along where I think the source of witchcraft, I guess, is if you want to talk about the science behind witchcraft and how it works. For me personally, I think it's kind of a combination of psychology and science, right? So let me jump into what they said here. As a scientist, I think of it this way. I believe that all supernatural things are actually natural phenomena that we simply don't have the scientific understanding to explain yet. I think of it like the electromagnetic spectrum. If you were to tell people 300 years ago that there were waves of energies all around us at all times, and we can only see the small part of the spectrum known as visible light, people would think that sounds like a supernatural belief. I believe witchcraft, and likely all kinds of other spiritual practices, taps into and can influence another spectrum of energy that we don't perceive or currently understand. But this energy can influence the world we do perceive, just like the electromagnetic spectrum. This is just my personal rationalization, belief, philosophy, and in no way do I think it's the only valid explanation, just the one that makes the most sense to me right now. And I in no way pretend to know how it works, but I think it's possible that quantum physics is potentially studying this plane of energy, which I agree with. So that goes on to my second one that is aligned with this. And this person said, okay, so I have a very simple understanding of this, but I feel that what we understand as witchcraft or just any type of energy work, reading, manipulation is just quantum entanglement. This year, which is 2022, physicists won a Nobel Peace Prize for proving that connected energies were able to influence each other regardless of distance faster than the speed of light. I've attached a link here for people who are way smarter than me. Separation is an illusion, yada yada. And they've got a link. I'm fascinated by quantum physics and how it can relate to witchcraft, but it can get super technical. So I asked ChatGPT to help explain what quantum entanglement is and then what it is that they proved when they got the Nobel Peace Prize in 2022. So what ChatGPT said is quantum entanglement is like having two magical dice that are connected no matter how far apart they are. So one dice can be, here on this earth in front of you, and another one can be across the universe. And they are always going to be connected no matter how far away they can get from each other. So if you roll your dice and it rolls a 6, that will happen to this other dice that is across the distance of the universe. Now, scientists don't know how this works. They don't know how it happens, but they do know that it's real and it's a proven phenomenon in quantum physics. Okay. Now, the people, it looks like there were 4 people, Alan Aspect, John Clauser, and Anton Zeilinger, JK, 3 people, that worked on this groundbreaking experiment, right? Now, this is what's interesting. Their work confirmed that this spooky action at a distance, as Einstein called it, is real and not just a weird loophole in physics. Their discoveries confirm that the universe is deeply interconnected at a quantum level. This has big implications for quantum computing, secure communications, and even understanding the nature of reality itself. So how does proving quantum entanglement apply to witchcraft? Well, for one, there's 3 things, but for one, if one particle can influence another particle across space and time, why wouldn't our spiritual magical energies, our thoughts, why our spells, why wouldn't they be able to do the same? They would. Quantum physics has shown and proven that observing something can change its behavior. It's called the observer effect. So why wouldn't that apply? I mean, it applies to manifestation purposes. It applies to sigils and our own just like energies and thoughts. Again, by observing it, it can change its behavior. Fascinating. The third thing is it proves everything is connected. So quantum physics proves that everything is connected on a microscopic level. And that's true, right? Now, most spiritual practices, including witchcraft, typically believe that everything is connected. And by proving quantum entanglement, they've proven that that's real. And that really it's just the beginning of the horizon of what we're going to be as humans able to start learning and understanding about how it works. So I just think it's really fascinating. I do think there are some scientific things to prove witchcraft, but I just think that we're not there yet. But anyways, I hope that this was really helpful. I didn't want to just give you like some definition that was like, witchcraft is this. So I wanted to kind of give you some different angles and beliefs. So I hope that helped. So what is witchcraft used for? How can you use witchcraft in your practice? You can use it for protection, like creating charms or casting spells and using crystals or crafting sigils to shield yourself and loved ones from any kind of negativity. You can also choose to use it for healing purposes. Now, that can be with herbs or even just like your emotional energy and thoughts. You can use it for divination, and that can, be a whole variety of different ways you can use it for divination. You can use like Norse runes. You can use tarot or oracle cards. You can do scrying or dice divination. I mean, it really just depends on the practitioner and, what they choose to work with. You can use witchcraft to connect with nature and the cycles of the earth or the moon cycles. You can also use it to work with the magic elements like fire, air, water, earth, and spirit. And you can also celebrate the pagan holidays. You can use witchcraft for spiritual growth, which would be deepening your understanding of yourself, which is often called shadow work. You can understand, the universe and use your spiritual energy through rituals and meditation work. You can use witchcraft to manifest your goals, like attract money or love or protection. And you can also use witchcraft to like remove negativity from your life, or like banishing or getting rid of things that you are no longer interested in keeping around. Now I'd like to discuss some of the more popular types of witchcraft. So there's 6 that I cover. These are the ones that I hear people ask about the most, especially newer practitioners. And I think sometimes some of the terms can get a little confusing, and people not really understanding what they mean. So I wanted to jump into each one of those and just give you kind of a brief overview. Let's begin with what is black witchcraft. Now, I think this one's the most misunderstood. I think when a lot of people think of black witchcraft, they think of, somebody doing something really evil or like invoking some kind of scary demon. And I think, when we put some cognitive reasoning to that, we understand that it's got some negative, and hurtful connotations and like negative racial stereotypes. So, that is not really what black witchcraft is. It's more about destructive magic, and like the left-hand path. So people can use these for all kinds of things. Black magic is, they'll set boundaries with it or use it to kind of reclaim their power. A lot of people use it to seek justice for people who have been wronged. And it's not necessarily like any kind of like evil form. It's just destructive magic. Like, I prefer to call it destructive magic because I can never remember which one is the left-hand path or the right-hand path. Like, in the moment, I always get confused. I'm like, which one? So I always just refer to it as destructive magic. But that's me. The next one is, what is neo-witchcraft? So basically what neo-witchcraft is, it's basically essentially an eclectic witch. So it's a witch who will take kind of older traditions and modernize them, not only with the practices but also the like spiritual beliefs. They've modernized them and brought them forward. So really it's essentially just the eclectic witchcraft path. They will use a mix of different things that resonate with them. It can be technology, it can just be their belief system, and they modernize it and bring it into today. So that is neo-witchcraft. The next one is green witchcraft. Now, this is also a really popular one. Green witches often incorporate nature into their path, and like kind of earth magic. They might even call themselves garden witches or earth witches. And most of them, not all of them, most of them believe in animism, which is basically the belief that like within nature, everything within nature, so like trees or crystals or animals, they all have their own spirit or soul. And a lot of green witches enjoy like kind of more healing aspects. So you might see them working with, herbs, or different methods to kind of like have those healing powers, maybe making teas or some kind of other ointments and healing mixtures. White witchcraft is normally considered like good magic, like peaceful magic, kind of healing magic, maybe working with like the moon or lunar energies. But again, we go back to these negative and kind of harmful racial stereotypes. So it's better to refer to white magic as like constructive magic. And really, I think that we can just like let go of like good and bad. I think it's kind of a little old and outdated way of thinking. I think if instead you're just focusing on, your intentions and the magical energy that you have, that's a better way to go. But of course, do whatever you want. It's your practice. Santería is a spiritual practice rooted in the Yoruba region of West Africa, and it was brought over to the Americas through slavery. It is a closed practice, which means that it's rooted in cultural beliefs and traditions, and you must be invited and initiated in order to practice it. It is a polytheistic religion. So most of their like traditions and beliefs center around like offerings and honoring their ancestors. Now, according to Britannica, Santería was brought to Cuba by the people of the Yoruban nations of West Africa, who were enslaved in great numbers in the first decades of the 19th century. The name Santería derives from the correspondences made by some devotees between the Yoruba deities called Orishas and the saints of Roman Catholic piety. Now, the last one is modern witchcraft, but I kind of think it's similar to neo-witchcraft, and it's similar to like the eclectic path, where you can kind of just customize it and make it your own. But I think really the push for like when people say, oh, I'm a modern witch, I think what they're really saying is that they enjoy using technology in their practice. So they, may keep their grimoire on their phone, or, I don't know. So using tech basically within their practice more, which I don't think is anything wrong with that. I mean, sometimes it can be helpful. I was just talking in the other day in the Discord about how I've been kind of moving my grimoire into Notion and kind of seeing if I like it over there better. So far I have. So that's really, I think, what people are talking about the most when they're saying that they're like a modern witch. Is witchcraft evil? I think everyone in this group knows that it is not evil. Okay, I think we can all agree on that. However, it has been, misrepresented and feared throughout time because it has been cast as like sinful or evil by specific religious institutions. And that has caused a lot of confusion. But I think it's important to remember that these theological ideas are rooted in a lot of kind of hateful, patriarchal, dogmatic beliefs, and they have very limited worldviews outside of their own. And just because you don't understand something, or I've never, taken the time to really listen to anyone who has, I think it's honestly just dumb to consider something evil or like hateful in some way. Before I move on to the next section, I do just want to say that you don't need to follow any certain type of witchcraft like path. You can just, be eclectic, I guess that's a type of path, but you can just do whatever you want. You can make witchcraft fit for you. You don't need to categorize yourself under one of those types. And in fact, I wouldn't, especially if you're newer, I wouldn't worry about that or get too hung up on that. All I would do is, if you're looking to try to figure out what you want to focus on in your path, just focus on what's interesting to you. Do you like to cook? Try to figure out how to add magic and witchcraft into your cooking. Do you like to, do crafting things or as gifts to people? Like maybe you like to knit, you could get into knitting magic or knot work. There's all kinds of things that you can do. You can garden and do herbs. You can do protective magic. There's just all kinds of things. Like if you like to sing, you can think about how you can bring that into your witchcraft practice. In the Hecate book that we were just reading, they were talking about how that's such a great offering to Hecate, is just by singing. You don't need to give her any gifts or have anything physical. You can just sing. So really, like, exploring yourself, that's what's so great about witchcraft, is that it makes you, kind of forces you to get to know yourself even better and really start understanding like what you're capable of and how powerful you are. So don't get too hung up on the label. Just get hung up on what fascinates you and go that way. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is witchcraft beliefs and whether you need to follow a specific like religion to practice witchcraft, or is witchcraft a religion? So no, witchcraft alone is not a religion. You can look at it as a religion and you can feel free to practice it that way, but it isn't in and of itself a religion, right? You can feel free to practice witchcraft however you want outside of a religious belief system. Now, that does always bring up Wicca, right? Because Wicca is a religious belief system. And Wiccans call themselves witches. So what Wicca is, in case you don't know, it was basically invented in the 50s by a man named Gerald Gardner and his coven. A lot of his coven members were made up of druids. And so basically he brought in a lot of ancient pagan beliefs, druid beliefs. He also spent time with Aleister Crowley, going through, he got initiated. I can't remember if it was the Ordo Templi Orientis or the Golden Dawn. But one of those, Gerald Gardner got initiated into that with Aleister Crowley so that he had access to all the documents and writings that they used. And all of that got like put into the Wicca belief system. Gosh, I could talk about this all day. I don't even know where to start. But so one of the things that Gerald Gardner did was they wanted to celebrate like the Wheel of the Year. So they were trying to bring in older Celtic beliefs, which is celebrating the holidays Imbolc, Beltane, Lunasa, and Samhain. So those are the 4. Now, mostly Celtic people just believed in like the cold half of the year and the warm half of the year, but they did have, those are kind of the 2 main. So that's why you'll see like Beltane is kind of the bigger holiday, and Samhain is kind of the bigger holiday because that was kind of the 2 main ones, but they did celebrate Imbolc and Lunasa as well. However, a lot of his coven members were druids, right? And they celebrated some of the equinoxes, right? So you've got the spring equinox, you've got the summer solstice, you've got autumn equinox, and like winter solstice. And they wanted to include that too, which Gerald Gardner wasn't super into, but they basically wanted like the 6 holidays and 2 of like the 2 equinoxes, and it wasn't really an even wheel, so they added in all 4 to kind of make it a more even wheel of 8. But then they didn't know what to name them because they didn't have like Imbolc or Samhain or any of those like kind of Celtic names. So in the 70s, there's a man named Aidan Kelly who lived in San Francisco who decided that they should have those names. So he went back through some readings and named those holidays based on what he thought they should be. A good example of that is this for the spring equinox. Wiccans refer to it as Ostera, and that is because that is a Germanic spring goddess. I don't really like that personally. I just feel like it's kind of picking and choosing a lot of things and throwing them in. So I'm not a practicing Wiccan, but there are many people that are, and it's a totally valid path if you would like to do that. Most Wiccans believe in the rule of 3, which means like basically anything that you put out, whether it's good or bad, comes back to you times 3. They also celebrate the Wiccan Rede, which is something like, "And ye harm none, do what ye will." So that is a religion. And a lot of times Wiccans practice in like a coven, and they have like a high priestess that they follow. There's also different branches of Wicca. You'll have like, I don't know them off the top of my head, but there's like Gardnerian. There's one that's like more female focused. I can't remember what the name of it is though. I think it's like, oh, that's going to bug me. I'm going to look it up. It's like Dianic. It was called Dianic. The last point that I want to really just make sure everybody understands is that while Wiccans will call themselves witches, witches don't necessarily call themselves Wiccans. So I think as long as you know that going forward, it can kind of ease your mind that you don't have to practice all these things and put it in. Because I know a lot of new witches and beginners believe that they have to practice the rule of 3 and the Wiccan Rede. And I just like to make sure that I point out to new people that you do not have to believe that. All right, I hope that gave you guys a really good understanding of what witchcraft is. If you have any questions, make sure to comment in the Coven section of the Discord, and we can chat about it some more, okay? Well, lots of love to you guys, and remember, as always, stay peculiar. Say, you and a loved one, I shouldn't have gone off script. I think people associate that with evil. What was that? That sounded like explosion. Like I felt the ground move.
Yeah, me too.
And they also follow the Wiccan read. This has big implications for quantum computing. The last thing I think that is important to remember about Wiccans is that Wiccans call themselves witches, but you don't have to be a witch and have, wait,